Hello and welcome. It is April 24th, and today is our first. Actually, I'm really excited to share this collaboration across our ESUs around helping districts prepare for that potential. We are maybe moving into this next academic year still in this remote learning phase. It's possible. So we really want to help you think through and plan some high quality educational opportunities for your kiddos. So the website, and Eileen will put this in the chat, please, but the website here is developed in collaboration across our ESUs as well as with our Department of Education. The tabs up over here at the top are some professional learning opportunities that pertain to normal times, but we aren't living in normal times right now. And so as a result of school closures, our Department of Education has come out with some guidelines or some guidance around what might we do. There's two different options that they identify: educational opportunities, and these feel fairly similar to what we know and what we've experienced in our classroom. When we talk about educational opportunities, the department defines these as research-based experiences, that they are also standard or skill-based experiences. I mean, it looks fairly similar to what might happen in a classroom, in a day, in a lesson. And we'll expand on that in a little bit, but the key point is that we need to remember those best practices in teaching and learning, that we need to continue to value that instruction, that we aren't relying solely on mom and dad or big brother, little brother, some other family member to provide the instruction. And that's true if we're talking about an online experience as well as if we're talking about an offline experience. The resources that we have here are here to help you think through potentially both. Depending on your context, you may need to be thinking about those online and those offline experiences. In just a moment, Eileen will dive a little bit deeper into that idea. And also, we want to think just a little bit. We'll focus more today on those educational opportunities, but we also want to think just a little bit about these enrichment opportunities. The nutshell version of enrichment is that we're thinking more about the practice segment of that traditional lesson. Potentially, we're incorporating our independent learning platform. So there's those tools that your district are paying for. For example, it might be Zern or your IXL or your Study Island or whatever the other tool. Maybe it's connected to your textbook, but you're allowing students to practice. It's not so much a focus on new learning where we need that instruction, but maybe more focused on mastery approach to practice potentially. Maybe using a gamified learning platform. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit in greater depth as well. As I scroll down here, I'd like to bring your attention to a couple webinars that were recorded earlier. And these also include a very good introduction, a deeper introduction to what we're thinking about today. Today, we're going to have a wonderful experience. We're joined by Laura here, a third grade teacher who will share her remote learning plan. This webinar talks a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of what we're thinking about when we say enrichment or educational opportunities. I invite you to watch that as well. I'm going to stop my screen share and turn the floor over to Eileen, and she'll take us directly into our educational opportunities.
All right. Well, before I go there, I just want to acknowledge that Nick is at ESU 5 and I am at ESU 2, and we are the co-facilitators of your webinar today, and we are also the co-chairs of the Digital Age Pedagogy Plan, our project. And I also want to acknowledge, and I just want Andrew to give a wave. Andrew Easton will be taking over July 1 as our digital learning coordinator for the state. Recently, Beth Kubish was in that role, but Andrew will be in that role. He's coming to us from Westside, so go ahead and do another wave there, if you would, Andrew. Thank you very much.
And I almost forgot, Eileen, before we jump right in there, we want to have a dipstick, right? What does that mean? We'd like to know, so we're talking about remote learning plans. This is a poll feature inside of Zoom. Please click the button. The question is, how confident are you that you can do this? You can create these remote learning plans. You can do it alone. You can do it with some help, with a lot of help. Take another 30 seconds to respond to this, please. We're about halfway there, looking great. There's 50 of us, 51 of us here today. I'm gonna leave it open for another 5 seconds. And now I get to share the results. So we actually have a good number of folks that are thinking, I've got this. That's great. We've got a few people thinking, I can do this with a lot of help. And that's a good place to be too. We're here to help you. And then other people are right in the middle. And that's where the majority of us are. We're experiencing some success, but we're still maybe have some difficulties. With that, Eileen, please.
Absolutely. So I'm going to get right into, I'm going to go back and I'm going to share my screen. Of course, if you did that work, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. I don't see my green bar around it. Usually that's my key, so I don't see the green bar, but there it is. So on this website, we do have educational opportunities that I want to make sure that you are attuned to as you move forward into the remote learning. So the educational opportunities is that new knowledge that you're sharing with students. Remember, NDE broke it down into educational opportunities and enrichment opportunities. There is a difference. So when you're thinking about the new learning for your kids, there's some considerations that you need to be thinking. Like, how am I going to introduce this topic? How am I going to select those essential learnings? Because we all know that there's a lot that we teach, but we can't teach the same way that we did in person when we only get a snippet of time with those kiddos. And on the flip side, some of our kiddos, some of our families are having some connectivity issues. So how do I have some offline opportunities for students as well? On this website, you will see multiple amounts of resources. This is probably my favorite resource on this page because it gives you a very short way of introducing some new learning for students. What is the learning goal? And then including a self-assessment right there at the top. The students finish this sentence, I can do this. Maybe it's with a little help, or maybe it's with a lot of help, or maybe I can already teach somebody, but having the kids engage in that learning. And then thinking about through this process of, here's what my instruction is going to be. Here's what I want the students to process. Here's what I want them to practice. And here's what I want them to produce. So if you're thinking in those 4 different areas, how am I going to instruct it? Maybe it's a video, maybe it's a reading, maybe it's paper pencil, maybe it's online. How am I going to process? How am I going to have my students process and practice, and what's the product? And then I'm going to turn it back over very quickly to Nick, and he's going to talk a little bit more about enrichment. And as he's turning that over, I just want to encourage you to use the chat to share any resources. We have some people on here at all different areas. Use that chat box and share things with your colleagues.
Excellent. In that chat, the challenge question right now is, are you doing this online only, offline only, or is it a combination? Please go ahead and share. So that was a great introduction to what we mean by educational opportunities. Let's briefly look at enrichment opportunities. So we talked about these as our Department of Education defines an enrichment opportunity as supporting the ongoing development of a particular knowledge base or skills or set of skills within a grade level, or potentially across grade levels. An enrichment opportunity includes a few different ideas. And so potentially when we think about online enrichment opportunities, you might think about those gamified independent learning platforms. Something like a Prodigy in math, or a Dreamscape in English language arts, or Legends of Learning in science. Maybe instead of that gamified experience, maybe it's that skill or standard-based independent learning platform. Examples here include that Zern, maybe that iExcel. Study Island, it has a little bit of a game effect to it, but it's not quite as engaging as these Prodigy, Dreamscape, Legends of Learning. I like this chart here because it shares the teacher experience as well as the student experience. And that if we're thinking about an enrichment opportunity, these platforms don't require you, the teacher, to create the content, but from that student side, potentially we need to consider what their experience is. So with these gamified independent learning platforms like a Prodigy, it's really actually pretty amazing the amount of work kids will do when they're enjoying what they're doing. I can remember my third grade daughter last summer actually starting in Prodigy. She's on this quest and she's supposed to get to the top of a tower with 100 floors. And on each floor, you're supposed to answer a math question in a battle. Can you imagine if I gave her a worksheet with 100 problems, how excited she would have been to complete that activity? And so, so when we think about those enrichment activities, or potentially incorporating some of those gamified independent learning platforms into your practice segment, those are some considerations to take. Another thing that I'd like to share is that potentially it's not, maybe you're able to do both. Maybe you're doing an enrichment opportunity as well as engaging kids in some educational opportunities. And so with that, I'll cede the floor back and stop my screen share. Good.
Thanks, Nick.
Introduce our interviewee.
Perfect. So I'm going to give a full disclosure. She might not like this at all, but about 2 weeks ago, I was talking with this amazing third grade teacher at Lincoln Public Schools, and she was sharing with me her remote learning plan. She was so excited about having the kids get on. Well, I'd like to introduce to you Laura Heller from Lincoln Public Schools, Pershing Elementary. And a little bit of a side note, she is my daughter. I know we look alike. We're kind of like twins, but here's the thing. She is probably 10 times the teacher that I ever was. Third grade was my favorite. So Laura, why don't you go ahead and you can share your screen. And I would love you if you would just walk us through your slideshow of what you've done. And then I'm going to ask you some questions after you do that.
Yeah, so I, like my mom said, I teach at Lincoln Public Schools, and so they kind of shared with us, like, we do reading on Mondays, math on Tuesdays, reading on Wednesdays, math on Thursdays, and then we incorporate science and social studies and other things if we wanted to. So I did not make this, I found it. So just, I'm not taking credit for the actual slide deck.
Beg, borrow, and steal.
Yes, like I borrowed this, but then I like kind of put my own thing, my own twist on it to make it my own. And so basically every single day the slides look the same. At the beginning, I always share with my kids, this is what the week is going to look like. Here's Monday, here's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so they know what's going on and they know what to expect. I tell them where they can access all of the lessons and the materials. I have office hours for Zoom, so I just have my Zoom up and then they can come and ask questions whenever they want. And then I include just information about, like, we have class meetings. So we decided as a class, we wanted 2 meetings a week plus a lunch a week. And so I just always include those things as well. And so like this is a Tuesday lesson. So I have math is mainly for Tuesday. And so I created, again, I didn't make this, but like I decided what things. So they have a must do and then they have a may do list. And really the must do's, like I include the lesson that they're actually doing for the day and then a practice page, as well as I'm like going to introduce the lesson. And I kind of had to accept that, like, even though I would love for them to do more in one day, like I was talking with my kids today, sitting at a screen and staring at a screen for 50 minutes watching a lesson is really, really hard for them. And so I try to make my must-do list really small. And then I try to make my may-do list things that they really like. So like I didn't make this. Again, I found it on Teachers Pay Teachers. It was free. So I found a place value activity, and because place value was really hard for my kids, and so I included that. They have multiplication and division activities on Seesaw. Again, I found those, and my kids really like Seesaw, and so I just decided to do that. And then they can practice their math facts. And every day this looks the same. So then the next slide is always an introduction video. I tell them this is what you're going to be learning. These are the materials you might need. We try to make activities that require as little materials as possible because we were one of the school districts that like ended on spring break and then didn't get to come back. So a lot of my kids don't have a lot of things. And I also teach at a school that 75% of the kids are on free and reduced lunch. A lot of kids don't have a printer at home. They don't have a lot of things. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for them to do. And so then they watch the introduction video, then they watch the lesson. And I want to make it as easy as possible. And I included links to everything so that like they can just click on it and it will go straight to where they need to go. And then since science is what we're doing, science is like a 1 week they have to do one thing. But I always my kids told me that they loved science. And so I made as many like may-dos for science as possible. I actually asked my kids on a poll, like, will you do the may-do activities? What may-do activities do you want? And these were the things that they said. And I always include a may-do for reading, a may-do for math, and a may-do for writing. And it looks super similar. This is Tuesday, but then this is Wednesday. And you'll see the only thing that's really different is the color because it helps me know this is a reading day. But it looks very similar every day, so kids know exactly what to expect. They've experienced the same type of slides for 4 weeks now, so nothing changes for them.
Laura, how did you narrow down your learning goal?
So like we can take reading, for example. We use wonders in reading. And so obviously we're doing Monday and Wednesday, and that's it for reading. And maximum they have a 45-minute lesson to listen to. And so we really had to think like, what is the most important thing that we want them to learn? And what are some like extra things that are just like fun or like that aren't really related to like, aren't a heavy standard or aren't a heavy, like we really want them to know this by the end of 3rd grade. So like we always in a reading, you're going to cover vocabulary words and then a comprehension skill. And then the teacher is going to close read the text. But there's a lot of other things, like if you teach wonders or any other reading curriculum, there's so many things. You just have to decide like what is really important. And for reading, like the comprehension skill is really, really important. And so we narrowed a lot of things down towards that.
Yeah. And I noticed that you have videos on your slides.
Yes.
What are the videos of?
So this one, like this is just a video of me introducing the lesson. And so every day when we have a new lesson, I'll introduce it. And so I always say like, hi, I miss you guys so much. And I get really excited about reading in my classroom and my kids know that. And so whenever like I know the story that's coming up, like this week, I was like, guys, this is my favorite story. I'm so sad I don't get to read it to you. But I was telling them about, like I tell them, you're going to listen to your vocabulary words. You're going to read the story, you're going to do a comprehension skill. The person that's teaching the lesson might not necessarily be me. And so I always, like, I think you could see in the other slides, I introduce who the teachers are going to be, so they know, like, hey, it's not me, but this is who it is. And then it's basically just like an intro to tell them, here's what you're going to be learning about today, and this is what I want you to do afterward.
So at Lincoln Public Schools, they have the luxury of having lots of different roles and instructional facilitators that can help teach the lessons. However, at other schools, you may have two people, and maybe one person's going to teach reading and one person might teach math. Or what I would encourage you to do is I would encourage you to work together and capitalize on all of the different things that you have accessible to you to teach. You do not have to do this in an isolated world at all. Laura, why did you choose Google Slides? Because I showed another one that was just a little schematic, but I see you have the exact same things. You have instruction, you have process, you have practice, and you have product on there. Why did you choose Google Slides?
I like Google Slides because it's very separated, and I think that, like, it takes kids one by one through what they're supposed to do. I like that, like, I personally love Google Slides, and I teach off of Google Slides a lot. We use Google Classroom quite frequently in my classroom, and a lot of activities are interactive on Google Slides, Google Drawing, Google Docs, and so kids are really familiar with it, which helps, because I think that if I was introducing them to something new, it would be harder.
Yeah, and that really brings me to a point as well. There are so many free things out there right now, and I know that we want to use and get those free things, but I just caution you about adding too many new things for our kids. And if you don't have any learning management system like Google Classroom or like a Canvas or a Seesaw, then that would be the first thing I would ask you to put into place, is a learning management system, and then operate off of the KISS principle of keep it simple, because our parents are also working at home and trying to teach our kids, right? So Laura, how'd you gauge how long it would take for completion of your lesson? How'd you gauge that?
First I kind of asked parents, like, what times their kids would be working, because I know that they're not going to sit down from 8 to 3 like we do in school, and they told me, they're like, it's not fun to work by myself. I miss working in a classroom. And so I think that I think that they can sit down for maybe like 45 minutes and watch a lesson video, but then I think a lot of my kids take a break and then they come back and then they'll do something for another hour. So I would love my kids to work on something for like 2-ish hours, like a day, like maximum. But then I have some kids who are like overachievers. They really want to do a lot of things. And so that's when like they take the extra time to do the Made Use, because like I know realistically a lot of my kids are taking care of their younger siblings, or they're trying to or their parents don't speak English, so their parents can't help them, or like there's just so many things that are going on that I had to think, okay, like 2 hours a day, I think that's good. I think they need to get like the basic stuff, and then extra things, it's great if they get that. If they don't, it stinks, but oh well.
Laura, one thing I appreciate about your Google Slides presentation here is that it includes a mixture of these educational opportunities and then those Made-Us, those enrichment-like activities. And tell me about your decision-making process. I feel like some of our districts are trying to do maybe 2 or 3 lessons a day. So you're in 3rd grade, and you just talked a little bit about time on task expectations. But tell us a little bit more about how you decided so math is on Mondays and readings so tell us more about that process.
So the district overall made the decision to do certain lessons a day, and I I actually at first was like, they're only going to do reading on Monday. Like, that's it? Are you kidding me? And then I was like, okay, like they can't, I had to think in the mind of an 8-year-old. An 8-year-old cannot sit here and do math, reading, writing, all that stuff. But then I thought, okay, I have some kids who like, they really want to do a lot of work. And so then I was able to pick like my kids really, a lot of kids, like you said, gamified things earlier. They love like dragging things and like matching things and color coding things. And so like my Made You activities have a lot of those things. And so then kids kind of like, then I've kind of gotten kids to want to do a lot of the Made Yous because then like it's fun. So like my science Made Yous, they're really simple. So like they sort things or like they do I know word searches are not something that you use in like a classroom, but I was like, hey, this is fun. So then I put a word search on Google Slides and kids were like, they want to do it. And so I think it's like you have to think in the mind of a kid and how are you going to make it so they want to do this stuff?
That's great. So I love the MustDo Made Use, and you're getting some comments in the chat too that you probably can't see right now that you're getting MustDo Made Use, and really good comments there. I put in a link to a document from the Nebraska Department of Ed, and on page 3 at the bottom of that, it does talk about time on task for certain grade levels. So grade levels 3 through 5, approximately 2 hours a day. Lower than that, K2 is 1.5 hours a day. So you can use that as a resource there. There's also some really nice links in there. The other thing that I heard Laura say was our district made the decision to be uniform. And that's another thing that I would highly encourage your district to do. If every grade level every subject is doing something different, the parents are never going to be able to manage it, and the kids aren't going to be able to manage it. We cannot take our typical 7.5-hour day and just replace it online. It has to be scaled down. And so your NDE is actually saying, here are your guidelines. Laura, I just want one last question for you, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Nick. But if you, how did you get your kids to do this, and how are you monitoring what they're doing?
So I didn't know this before, but if you do know this, you can record your screen on a Mac by clicking Command-Shift-5, and then you can actually record your screen. So I took a video of myself like diving through, this is where you're going to go on Mondays, and this is what your folder is going to look like. And so I put everything on Google Classroom. And I put everything in a classwork page, and I also learned about topics. And so I include everything. So like, this is Friday's stuff. So this is what they do on Fridays. And so basically I told my kids, okay, every day you're going to go look at the day. And then I want you to do, Fridays are different, but I want you to do this thing first. And then this is what it tells me. And this didn't have any assignments. So 3 kids turning it in is not a good one, but that's not what is accurate in my class. And so kids go through the same process every single day. And I made a video, I posted it on our Google Classroom, but then I made a video and I also sent it to parents because I have a lot of parents, I have a couple who like were so lost at everything that was being communicated that just having like a streamlined thing to them was so much easier. So like I do download my slides every week and I send them to parents too, because then parents know exactly what they're going to be doing and then they can look at them ahead with their kids. But I've been videoing myself or my screen to tell kids like everything.
Fabulous. I did just drop in a link, and I think it's the right link. Check it out for me. And it's just on optional ways of screen recording. I also put in Command-Shift-5 on a Mac to video your screen, which is a great tool. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing. And I'm going to turn it back over to Nick, and he's going to get us into some breakout rooms.
Yes, excellent. So we've had a presentation, and I'd like to reiterate, right? So you saw a mixture, and so manageable expectations. That's key. consistency in manageable expectations across your district. That's key. The next experience that we're going to have is breakout. We're going to break out, and we have some guiding questions that will take you to a Padlet wall. I'm going to share my screen, and when I get to that Padlet wall,
so Nick dropped the link to the Padlet in your chat box. So you'll need that in just a minute. And this is the best part of the whole thing, except for Laura's presentation.
Of course. And so we're going to get into smaller groups, and we're going to ask you to share what's one takeaway that we have from our learning this afternoon. What's one challenge that you're currently having in your class or in your school, and what is one recent success? So we have 49 individuals, and we're going to get into some breakout rooms. So please grab out of the chat. You'll be able to do it in just a moment too. But grab that Padlet wall. I'm going to push you into your breakout rooms, and those are the 3 guiding questions. And go. So you should see on your screen the ability to join a breakout room. Go ahead and jump on in. Welcome back from breakout rooms. I'm going to share my screen here, and then let's look at some responses. And Eileen will help me do this too. So what's one takeaway from our presentation? And many of us said that we really enjoyed those must-dos and those may-dos. Another format that you might like, and so I love the Google Slides presentation, and I love the connection to Google Classroom. This is another way you might look at doing something similar, having a lesson of the day, and then maybe some must-dos and may-dos around an enrichment activity. I'll pop that into the chat here in just a little bit. But multiple individuals said that we liked that idea of having that educational opportunity, 1 a day, maybe 2 a day potentially, and then some may-dos, maybe some enrichment opportunities. We also liked, we can't do it the exact same way we used to do it. We got to keep it simple. Eileen, what were some other conversations in your group? Can you hear me?
Were you talking to me?
Sure.
Connie, go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
What happened in your? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I missed out there real quick. Well, we talked about some of the successes and some of the challenges. A major challenge is when the technology isn't working consistently. I'm lucky that I teach special education, and all the teachers have made me an administrator on their classes, so I can get on and see exactly what the kids need to do. And I can share my screen and shoot it up for them, and we talk through it together, or they can do that with me. And and that works great. But when the technology isn't working, if it's slow or just not working, man, it can cause a huge problem.
You know, that is one thing that we've talked with all along with our blend ed teachers, is always having that plan B. It's hard to have a plan B right now. I get that. But if the tech isn't working, I have seen the growth in teachers of, okay, well, I'll just troubleshoot this, or I will just be patient, we'll figure this out. But before, it was like, oh, throw my hands up, I can't do it. How many of you are thinking that same way now, right? And you're like, okay, I can do this. I can work my way through it. We can all be patient, because you really don't have any other choice, right? I would say in our group, it was the learning that the teachers are doing. And I love this line here on what was a recent success, and it's under feedback, and it says, it makes me feel like we are doing something right when a student or a parent says how much they are appreciating the time that we give. I would say that so many parents are giving us good feedback about how we are doing. We have not shut down schools. We have amped up our teaching. And it makes me, and I say this in almost every webinar that I'm on, but it makes me so proud to be an educator right now. It's hard. We are working hard, but it's making me proud. I understand that there's lots of other challenges. I did want to share this one from our group. Challenge was how to get the video to load and how to compress those videos. There are ways that you can compress videos on a Mac in QuickTime. There's an application called Loom that people are finding some success with, and that has a Chrome extension that you can use too. In the chat, I did put a link for all sorts of different ways to screencastify or to use screencasting, so you can use that too. Nick, take it away.
Excellent. I would also then, so we're having some difficulties around grading and kids not being held accountable. And once more, I'd also remind us, I'd come back to our website here, and when I scroll down, when we're thinking about enrichment, then potentially, I'd really, really encourage you to think about enrichment from that student experience. And if we're having some difficulty with whatever the tool is that you're using currently, potentially an idea, maybe not right now, maybe now isn't the time to introduce something new, but maybe over summer to play with some of these more gamified independent learning platforms. I really do promise you that these are fun for those kiddos. And be it the enrichment side or built into that educational opportunity around the practice, those gamified experiences will do well. Your kids will enjoy them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to working on this in the summer because, you know, when this all came about, we were pretty much just thrown into online learning, you know, and thank goodness we have done quite a bit of online learning anyway, like using technology with the kids, but definitely, you know, thrown into this. So I look forward to summer when we can play around with it a little, you know, not so rushed.
Right. Let me point out a couple more resources on the website here. So I too am a big fan of this document here. If you would like access to the chart to help you think through what that would look like, you can click here. Or when you scroll down just a little bit, there's an example of what that might look like, and it's filled out. A wonderful example from Laura today of thinking through an educational opportunity. Here's another one. This also includes that real quick self-check of I can, in this case, find cause and effect. And it shows you thinking through an online and an offline experience where that first activity is the instruction. We're focused on the objective. And then with the second activity, the real key with the process activity is that we have some immediate feedback from the teacher. And in an offline experience, maybe that's check your answers with the teacher guide or check your answers with the answer key. And an online experience.
As Nick keeps going, we want to make sure that you're using your quality instructional materials that you already have access to, that kids are already used to using. Like Laura used Wonders as her core. If
Yep.
you have Scott Forsman as your core reading, or if you have Eureka Math as your core, use that first for your high quality instructional materials. Please do not think that you have to go find all sorts of things on Teachers Pay Teachers or Pinterest. Use the materials you have. Keep it simple.
Completely agree. When we scroll down, so that key point there was that process activity gives some immediate feedback. Then you get into some more practice, then you get into show what you know. On this example, those may do's are bonus tasks. They're optional for kiddos. There's a math example, and when you scroll down further, there's a writing example as well. Great. On our website, I'll come back to the top here. Don't get seasick with me. I'd like to point out again, this one will walk you through in a deeper level of the different resources available on the website. And finally here, want to remind you that we plan to do this every Friday until, remind me, Eileen, this is until May 15th.
Yes.
Yes. And so we'll do this every Friday. You're welcome to join us. You've registered. You'll get an email from us reminding you that it will happen. You're not expected necessarily to come. You're welcome to join us. Then in May, we're going to hold a half-day workshop. It'll be virtual, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into what we mean by high-quality remote learning. We'll look at some plans that have been created by educators around our state. And finally, in that time, you will have time to create your own remote learning plan. So you'll walk away with a remote learning plan, a high-quality remote learning plan created. Finally, in June, we have our Future Ready Conference. This is a collaboration between our Department of Education and our ESUs. This year to help us prepare for the potential that we are still doing remote learning in that 2021 academic year. A little bit different is that the target audience is all of our stakeholders, our administrators, our tech coordinators, all of our folks in our district. That'll be June 15 and 16. All of these events are free to all. We just ask that you register, and then you'll get the link to attend. What did we miss, Eileen?
I don't know. That was kind of a whirlwind of good information. We hope that you just took 1 or 2 snippets away that you can use over the weekend to plan for the rest of this school year, or that you're going to work hard on over the summer. I think it's really important to know that Nick and I and your ESUs are there to help you. You reach out to Nick and I, we can help you with anything. But your ESUs are also amazing resources. You all have a tech integrationist at your ESU, and your curriculum people there are also working super hard. Nick has put some things in the chat for another remote learning template, and this Padlet is there for you that you can contribute to as well. We do have some people that are coming in and out, so if you're just joining us, you're starting for the middle school, high school, and we will start that at 2 o'clock. We're just finishing up this one right now.
So I think that concludes our elementary segment of today. Thank you all for joining. We hope to see you next week. It'll be a similar format. We'll interview an elementary teacher who's done some great things in their classroom and have a similar conversation.
Thank you, Laura Heller. We appreciate you very much. I almost said Laura Barks too. Sorry. Goodbye, all.
Thank you, elementary folks.
So if you're joining us for the middle school, high school,